Hey, welcome to our panel at PAX South. Now, I am really thrilled I was brought in at the last minute. I'm going to be playing the part of friendly, skeptical player. My name is Linda Carlson. I'm also known as Brass the Dwarf in some circles, and I'm really happy to be here to talk about Astellia with you. Who are you?
My name is Wes Connor. I'm the producer for BE&A out of Irvine, California. We're here today to talk to you about Astellia Online. It's a new MMORPG that's launching this year, summer 2019.
Okay, I'm going to beat him down with a whole bunch of in-depth questions, but before that, what I'd like to do is have you play the video, Wes. I want people to get an idea of what this game looks like. And
Right.
is this going to be in-game footage or fancy fixed-up stuff?
Well, we actually brought two videos, but we want to focus on the actual in-game footage first. That way you guys can really see what it is we're showing you, what we're here to
Okay.
talk about.
Welcome to Astellia.
That's it.
Okay. All right, that looked pretty impressive.
In the blighted lands of Maglev.
Wait, pause. Yeah, that's for later. This next.
We'll get to that one.
Yeah. The next video that we're going to show after we do a little bit of chatting here and I challenge Wes on some topics is brand new, it's fresh, the voiceover was just done for it, so it's going to be really interesting to see. So, I am a skeptical MMO player. I have been told for the last several years that MMOs are dying and I see them collapsing all around me. A lot of new releases, they come out, they do okay, they reveal all their problems, and then they crash and burn. What's going to make Astellia different?
Well, I mean, really from the very beginning, Astellia has been a long-term project. It's been in development now for about 6 years. That's why it's actually on the Unreal 3 engine. But from the very beginning, we've been trying to make an MMO that goes back to the classic tenets, what most of us, especially all of us out here in the audience, have been looking for, what really got us into the industry to begin with. Astellia is a game that isn't going to deny content to one side or the other. It'll have PvE, it's going to have PvP, and we're not looking to treat this as anything short-term. We want this to be a game that you and us both enjoy for many years to come, and that's going to be a part of our development cycle and part of the communication that we have with you, the players.
Now, I know, I know for a fact you have some theories on why so many recent MMOs have failed. What do you think is the problem? This is a really opinionated guy, by the way.
She's not wrong. Over the last 3 years, if you take a moment and you think about the different games that you've seen come out, they've been treated kind of like smash and grab. They're very short term. In the beginning, they're pumped up really big, really high. I mean, you see the adverts everywhere, full website takeovers, and 6 months later, there's not another drop of content left for you. And it leaves you there hanging. It's something that you really invested yourself into on a personal level, and it never pans out. And that's not what we're going to do. And I mean, one of the key factors that have really built into that and led into it is this, we'll call it a plague of pay to win on the industry itself. And that's hurting us as professionals, that's hurting us as players, and it's something that needs to change. And Astellia wants to be a part of that change.
Okay, so when we look at that trailer, it's very, very clear that this is a Korean MMO. You can tell by the art style, you can tell by the sound, and Korean MMOs are famous or perhaps infamous for being very much pay to win. How are you going to address that with Astellia?
Pay to win is a mechanic, and depending on which market you're in, it can be received in many different ways. The truth of the matter is, in the Western market, it doesn't work. It's not what we want. We play games competitively. We play games to have fun. We play to win. And with Astellia, what we're going to do, our current plan, and this is going to hinge heavily on all of you out there watching and listening and the people that come in later. We're going to work to take those different mechanics, the things that you would consider pay to win, like full heal, instant power potions, things of that nature, and instead of locking them behind a payment wall, they belong in-game. That should be a reward for playing hard, for playing well, and for investing your time. One of the phrases that we've been touting in our office and sharing with everybody, and we're very proud to stick to this, is power is not sold and loyalty is earned. That's a core tenet of our studio and of this game, and it's something we're going to be carrying forward throughout the lifetime of this project and our future projects.
Can you talk a little bit about that? We know that there have historically also been communication challenges between Korean developers and the Western publishing side. How are you addressing that?
Well, that type of problem, that breakdown in communication, I mean, there are a lot of factors that can lead to it, but at the most basic level, there's a dichotomy between the developer who has a dream of making the game, a publisher who wants to bring it to the rest of the world, and you, the players, that want your game. The way that we've worked to resolve this is there is no split. Berenson E&A is the global publisher for this. Studio 8 works hand in hand. They have a shared office, and our branch here in North America, we operate as a single global publishing team. There is no barrier there. So whenever you're giving that feedback, whenever you're looking at our game and you communicate it to our CMs on this side, that goes directly to the rest of the team. Nothing is getting lost in translation at this stage. We're one cohesive unit.
Now, having said that, does the Korean version of the game use a different monetization model from what you're using, and how are you differentiating them?
So most definitely, the KR model and the Western model are going to be noticeably different. The easiest way to explain that is for North America and Europe, the game is going to be buy to play. We'll do buy to play. We'll have a microtransaction store, which I can see the skepticism in the audience right now. That's completely okay. As I explained earlier, those pay-to-win mechanics that do exist in other regions are going to be adapted and be part of the in-game content itself, whether it's through time gating, through achievements, through running dungeons and clearing them at a very high skill level. It'll be something that you work towards, not something you pay to have.
I'm also going to quote you. You have specifically said, because I've got
This is
notes
always
here,
fun.
You'll have a direct channel to the dev team.
That is
Do you
correct.
feel that that's actually going to be possible with a dev team on the other side of the ocean? Because
There-
we've seen this a lot before, right?
Most definitely, and easiest answer for that, they're here in the audience with me today. They came here to be a part of this, and that is a day-to-day part of my operation.
Cool. Hey, raise your hands if you're part of the dev team over there. Yeah. Oh, hi. Thank you so much for coming.
That's it.
Okay. So I also want to talk a little bit. So when we're talking about items that would normally be sold for cash, how are people going to earn the higher end items in this game?
At this stage, we actually have quite a few ideas, but we haven't put one set in stone yet. There's an idea of doing some type of, say, like a daily login reward system, something as simple as that, or the game has an achievement system. It could be leveraged, and we could feed that into the achievement hunters. Whenever you're running dungeons, dungeons actually give you a score based off of how well you did, how fast you cleared it, the number of mobs you killed, and your kill to death ratio. So let's say if you get an A rank and you're hitting the dungeon as hard as possible, there could be a better reward for you, and it could come from that pool of items instead of just putting it up on the cash shop.
Okay, that's actually really cool. Can you talk a little bit about the gender division? Because that's another thing that we know that Asian games in particular tend to gender lock a lot of the classes. So how are you handling that? Because you know we hate that, right?
Yes.
Like, I really want to play what I want to play.
That's it. I mean, you're known for being the dwarf, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's really simple. On the KR side, many games are gender locked. You can see it in a lot of the very popular games that are still on the market to this day. But in the Western market, our avatars and our characters, that becomes something that you really identify with. You invest so much time into it that, in a way, it kind of becomes a part of who you are, at least in that game. And right now, in
And
the
sometimes out of the game just a little bit.
That is exactly it. She understands. And right now, on the KR side, you can play the game and you'll see that the classes are gender locked. We're aware of that. We've taken in the feedback for it, and our dev team is going to be working to ungender lock those classes. That's not something I can commit to having complete by our launch schedule of this summer, but we want to at least get a couple of them done so that you have tangible proof before this game goes live that these types of changes are actually happening.
Okay, hang on. So if the class I want to play is gender locked at launch, and you then release the gender that I actually want to play of that class, can I change?
Well, of course, if a new system comes in that...
And how much is that going to cost me?
Why would that cost you anything? It's a new feature that should have been in at launch time.
You know they're recording you, right?
Yes, I
Yeah,
understand
yeah,
completely.
yeah.
But that's just it. That's a system that's an expectation for
That's
the
awesome.
Western market. So whenever it does come to place, why wouldn't you give each player at least one chance to make their character the way they wanted?
I love that.
They,
Okay.
in good faith, they bought the game from us, and whenever the time comes and that content is there for them, it is there for them.
So it's going to be a buy-to-pay or buy-to-play model, but after that, are you also going to have a subscription, or do you think that you will be able to make enough money from optional purchases through the cash shop?
We're confident that we'll be able to, through the optional purchases of the cash shop and just the overall initial buy-in for the game, as we move forward, if for some reason that doesn't work, we can look at other options as long as those options are true to the Western ideology for gaming.
Okay. So, you know, the possibility of a subscription or expansions or...
Expansions are definitely something we want to look at, and expansion can be a tricky term with the way the industry works now. And expansion needs to be something that has a major impact on the game.
Yeah, a significant and tangible change of gameplay.
Not one new class or throw in 3 new dungeons. It would need to be something heavy, but at that stage, we can look at selling expansions, and it's on the table. We're looking at it, and as we get to that stage, we're going to focus on it more heavily. But right now, our main goal is to bring the game to you in its initial form that is fit for the Western market, and we'll move forward from there.
Your use of the phrase smash and grab as a gameplay design tactic, can you expand on that a little bit? Like, what is smash and grab? Is that why these games are shutting down so early? Like, what goes into that?
All of us, every one of you sitting here, and myself included, we've all seen one game or another that as it was first announced, we got super excited. That's my game. This is what I'm going to be playing. And you start to invest in it, and you follow it for months and months and months. And that hype train, it gets faster and faster. It starts showing up on MMORPG. You start seeing Twitch streams and previews come out. And then the day the game launches, half the things you expected either weren't there or they never make it. And 6 to 9 months in, there's not 400 players left in the game itself. And I mean, in a way, I can understand from a business sense how you could say that's successful. You turned a revenue, it was cash positive. But that's no way to do business. At the end of the day, you need to build a brand and a relationship with the consumer itself and deliver a product that your consumer wants. And that's what we're here to do.
So your focus from the get-go is on longevity for the game.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, maybe it's worth investing in. But now we've talked a lot about what Astellia isn't. Can we talk about what Astellia is? I'd love for you to play this brand new lore video, and then I'd like to ask you a bunch of questions about the classes and playstyle and that sort of thing, and then we'll open it up for questions from the floor.
That sounds like a plan. Let's check out the next video then. This, just to give you some preface on it, is the story of the most powerful Astellian that ever lived. And
That dude with the axe in his back right there?
no, he's the one that got in her way. Yeah, so let's just take a look at it.
In the blighted lands of Maglev, the seeds of corruption and violence were sown by the demonic forces known as the Karza. Darkness threatened to engulf the world of Astellia. A shimmering star descended from the heavens, awakening the latent abilities of Yuria. She became the most powerful Astellian to ever live. By the will of the stars, she was charged with restoring the world to its natural balance. numerous victories led her to be proclaimed as a hero of the kingdom. Despite her efforts, the corruption of the Karza infiltrated deep within the Highborn. Deceived by their lies, the people turned against Tyria, calling for the execution of the traitor. They took everything from her. Betrayed by her people, she was overwhelmed with pain and despair.
I began to think this sinful world is undeserving of the light. I will return this land to the cold and beautiful age of darkness.
Astellia.
Wow, that was pretty cool. Who here loves Lauren backstory? Okay.
Almost everybody here.
Here's a test for you, because that's kind of what, when I was asked to do this panel, I started looking into Astellia. I had never heard of it before, and I immediately thought, oh, don't tempt me. Don't tempt me with the beautiful, beautiful art that we know comes out of Korean studios and not give me a really good backstory. Who here also, when you're doing quest lines, reads all of the small print of the backstory as you're going through them? Who does that? I love you people so much. So yeah, please make sure you give us lots of that. Tell us a little bit about the classes that come in this game.
Okay.
Because you've got this holy trinity thing. So let's start with that, and then I've got a question for you after that.
That's not intimidating at all. All right, so Astellia, as she said, it's a Holy Trinity-based game, and what we mean by that is it goes back to the time whenever classes actually serve a purpose and they have a specific role. That's, you have 5 classes. The Warrior, that's your tank, that's a sword and board type of gameplay, taunts, damage mitigation, you're the person that protects the group. Then you have your damage dealers, that's your Assassin, which is a high-speed, close range, it's a melee. Then your Ranger or Archer, whichever title you want to put on that, and that's your long-ranged bow user, again, a damage dealer.
And the guy who traditionally dies first.
Typically, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you only carry so many arrows. And then after that, you have your Mage, and that's the classic elemental types of damage, and that sticks pretty true to what you would expect Mage gameplay to be. And we don't have an actual priest. Instead, it's a class called a Scholar. They behave in a very similar manner. They provide buffs, supports. They have some debuff capabilities so that they can stand on their own, and their primary focus is keeping the rest of the group alive. Between the 4 of those, you take 4 of them, put a group together, and that's what you do for your primary gameplay. You run dungeons, and the standard group size is 4 players.
Oh, okay, so getting a group together is a little bit easier than in some games. That's very useful to know. So here's my question. What about if you like to solo?
Well, there's 2 really strong aspects of the game that work well for you if you want to solo. As the name of the game is Astellia, you have access to about 30 to 35 Astels in game. These are, as you saw, the creatures and the beings that got summoned out of the sky. They're the spirits of the stars, and between them, each of them represents a different class. They come in different sizes as far as if they're minor, mid-tier, or major. And you summon up to 3 of them at a time, and you use their skills to supplement your gameplay. And beyond that, the game itself has quite a few dungeons, and many of them offer a solo version. And that dungeon, it operates in a very similar manner to the group dungeon, just with a reduced difficulty and, of course, a reduced loot table.
Sure.
Because you can do it by yourself.
So wait, can you talk a little bit more about these Astels? Are they like individual entities?
Yes. So whenever you're playing the game, you'll be able to open up a panel and you can see all of the Astels that exist in the game. You have to unlock them throughout the gameplay, going through the main storyline, clearing dungeons. And as you unlock these Astels and you learn their backstory, because each one has its own personality, its own backstory, its own skill sets, you have a series of buttons on your UI. So say F1 through F8. And you can select which Astels you have active and ready to come with you, and you can weave in between them, summon one, use their abilities, and depending on the situation, you can change your own personal gameplay without having to change the actual character you're playing. The phrase that we typically use to describe this is classic classes made flexible. We don't want you to have to pick one character and feel pigeonholed into one role forever.
That's too good to be true, dude. I really, okay, so let's talk a little bit about when we can start trying this out. describe how your closed beta is going to work. Do we need to pre-order to get into closed beta? Are you going to have a random lottery system? Tell me how I can get in.
That's it. So we will not be doing a public alpha. Alpha is going to be reserved for us working in and getting the game ready.
Plus your friends, right?
Maybe. We'll see
We'll talk later.
We'll see how this goes. Then prior to launch, we currently plan to have 2 CBTs. In theory, we could squeeze more in there, but it's really important that in between those CBTs, we have a downtime so that the actual feedback that we need from all of you can be communicated to our dev team and they have time to act and put those changes in place. We're not going to be using CBTs as a strong marketing ploy, and we're not going to be launching under an early access flag. Whenever we are ready to launch the game, we will be ready to launch the game. And that's incredibly important to us.
And you've said 2019. How secure are you in that prediction?
I'm absolutely secure in 2019.
Wow, you're right firm on that.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I've personally taken trips to our headquarters in South Korea. I've met that team, and I am more than confident in their capabilities.
Okay, the game looks really nice. Are there different races in the game that you play? Like, is there a race tied to each class?
No, definitely not. It's whenever you make a character, for all intents and purposes, you're a human being. And as an Astellian, you are one of the few that have been chosen by Norden, the good god of light, to restore the balance of the world. And as a little bit of a side twist in the plot, Yuria, the woman that you saw that was betrayed by everyone,
Yes.
she knows that you're the next Astellian in line. And to stop you from interfering with her plans, she kidnaps your little sister. So you not only need to save the world.
I don't see this as being a problem.
No. Faye is actually a very sweet little girl, as surprising as it could be, and as annoying as little sisters can be. This one, the exception to the rule.
Okay, okay. All right. So, PvP. Some of us dwarves kind of like PvP. Do you have PvP, and how does that take place? Can I gank you in your sleep?
Okay, so PvP is an absolute excellent form of content, personally. It's what I play these games for. But we understand that grief is a problem, and there is a difference between PvP and there's a difference from griefing. And the way we've decided to handle that...
So no ganking you in your sleep?
No, there's ganking in your sleep, just in the right areas.
Oh, okay, fine.
There's an area of the game that's called Avalon. It's a large-scale, massive... How can I describe that? It's almost like the Guild Wars 2 RVR map. And the way this works is on a weekly basis, there are 3 different factions. You can join a faction for that week, and you have goals to achieve, whether it's killing monsters, collecting resources, completing quests, and you earn points for your faction. And at the end of the session, the most points earned wins, and the rewards are based off of that. And on that Avalon map, there is no protection. You are always open to being attacked, to being ganked. I wouldn't recommend just going AFK unless you're trying to feed points, and that's not going to make your team real happy.
Dude, factions. What factions?
It's just 3 factions of the war itself, and they tie into the storyline. It's not something that you need to select or worry about at the start of the game, and you're not tied to it on a permanent basis. So on each week...
Can you describe them? Just briefly?
Not at this time, no.
Oh,
You'll have to wait for that one. We have some pretty good stuff in store.
Okay, do you have support for guild systems?
Yes, Astellia has a guild system in it at this stage. You'll be able to make your guild, form it up with your friends, and based off of objectives and playing through the game, you'll be able to level up your guild and grow it. That's a system that will do very well in the Western market. We all like to have our guild because our guild is the best.
By the way, the inmates rule, I'll be recruiting soon.
There we go. And yes, absolutely. Guild support and community is something that's inherent to Astellia.
Okay. We're going to get set up for questions now. So we have a microphone right over here. If you've got any questions about the game, now is the time to ask it, because this guy's going to go back under a rock and keep working on the development of the game.
Yeah. She's not wrong.
Yeah. So the ideal group size, or the group size is 4.
Correct.
And you can use Estelles to help you round out your skill sets. Do you plan to have any raids where you need multiple groups?
That is content that we're definitely looking at, and it's not something that I can hard confirm at this time, but that is a major type of content, and speaking at least on a personal side, I want to see it. We need to see how it fits in with the game and with the market and what the players that actually come and play Astellia want. And
Okay.
we'll handle it on that basis.
And are all of the dungeons geared so that you can do it with a full group or
Yes.
2 people or whatever?
All of the dungeons are set in a way that you can definitely run them with a group, and then the vast majority of dungeons have a solo variation of itself. And very recently in the KR version, a third tier of dungeon called Legendary Dungeons that are remarkably difficult have been released, and that'll be...
Those are for the people who say, yes, I could totally run that with one arm tied behind my back and a blindfold on.
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
You know who you are, you power gamers. Okay, what's our first question?
Good morning. My name's Kenny, and I actually have a few questions.
Awesome.
All right, Kenny.
First things first. Everybody in the West knows that Korean MMOs are grindy.
Yep.
Is that what we're looking forward to in this one?
No, you can, whenever you first start the game and you go through the tutorial, you can follow the main storyline itself and reach the absolute end tier of the game. And honestly, I'd advise that you do the side quests along the way to unlock and earn the extra Estelles and to get a better feel for the story. You will not have to stand out and just kill monsters mindlessly. If that is your gameplay style, it is supported. You can do it, but you will not be forced to.
Okay.
Now, we have
thank
real
you.
life jobs if we want to
Yes,
do
exactly.
grinding.
I'm one of those.
Crafting. Question
Crafting.
mark.
The game, it actually has a pretty robust and in-depth crafting system, and it can produce some of the most powerful equipment in the game. And the components you get for that come from all aspects of the game, whether you're out in the open world gathering, whether you're running dungeons for rare materials off of a boss. Crafting is something that is inherent to Astellia, and whether you're a crafter yourself or you want to buy it off of the auction house at a later stage, crafting is something that you will see throughout the lifetime of Astellia.
Auction house. Cool.
Yes,
That
of
was
course.
actually my next one. But, and crafting, are you saying that the crafted materials will be the top tier? Or will you saying the legendary dungeons will be the top tier and crafting will take a sidekick?
Legendary dungeons drop materials for crafting.
Aha, there we go. Okay.
Okay.
I'm a healer. I always
Okay.
play a healer.
No
Am I
problem.
going to be watching little green or red bars the entire time?
No, you're going to have, in your 4-player group, each of you should have 1 to 3 Estelles summoned. And so if you want to be a healer, but you're clearing the packs of mobs leading up to the boss, summon some damage dealing Estelles. So one of my personal favorites is called Vanessa. She's a Valkyrie, golden armor, gigantic broadsword, huge wings, and every time she swoops across the battlefield, she burns a swath of the ground and kills everything in front of her. So wield 3 of those and contribute to the damage.
Cool. And I'm actually part of a very large guild.
Okay.
Probably one of the oldest ones in existence.
All right.
And you said there was caps and stuff involved with leveling up your guild and get more people in it.
Correct.
What's the entry count? I know it may fluctuate. Are you saying maybe 30 or 10 or what are you looking at?
I'm going off memory on this one, so it's not with the most confidence, but I want to say that it's 30 in the very beginning.
Okay. And then it's fairly easy to kind of get up to 50, then to 100.
correct,
and
yeah, you
after
keep
that,
scaling
gets
it up.
more difficult. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. It's
That's
looking
no
good.
problem at all. Really appreciate you taking
What's your
time.
guild?
The Guardians. We've been out since the end player, so I mean, it's been a while.
All right.
All right.
Hello, I have a question about play to win. So the notion of play to win is awesome, but it's been around for a while, and I've never found it to work really well. Because the notion, I work all day, so I come home and the people who aren't working or are working less than me have been able to take over my progress. Recently, there's a lot of games coming out with AFK features. Is it possible for me to leave my character doing something while I'm at work, or to tab in every now and then and make sure I'm still progressing in some way, or am I going to be a little bit left behind?
I wouldn't say it's something that you'd want to set and forget it like you're heading to work, but if you have time to pay a little bit of attention, one of the things that you could do is find a good quiet area of the game itself and have your Estelle summoned out, put them on aggressive, and have them work to kill the monsters that are around you. And as long as they're not too powerful for you, your Estelles could very reasonably, say for an hour or so, clean up those monsters and help you get a little bit of experience to keep up. It's not something you'd be able to do for a long period of time, and it would still require your attention, because, I mean, if an elite roams by or a Pat or anything like that, you're at the mercy of it, and the Estelles will never play as well as you do. So,
Awesome.
But definitely, there are systems in place that if you are a more casual player, you're still going to be able to play this game. I understand that time restrictions exist. We all have to deal with that in one form
gosh.
or another.
Yeah.
So it's just something that needs to be worked on and maintained as a mindset in the game itself, definitely.
Fantastic. Yeah, sounds really good. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
I definitely want to go back 20 years when I used to be able to go on Plane of Fear raids in EverQuest and stay out till 4:30 in the morning. That doesn't happen anymore.
All right. Hello, my name is Luke. I'm wondering if there's going to be unique item drops. Say, like you're clearing like a high-level dungeon, and you drop something that might only drop once, or is there going to be that item can drop multiple times for every player?
Okay, that's something else I'll need to check on, but I can give you an example of some of the more rare things. So in Avalon itself, if you do very well and you become one of the top tier players of the Avalon scene, there's a unique Pegasus mount that's only available to players that make it into that bracket. So the option for this type of content is there. It can definitely exist, and if that's something that the player base wants, it's something that we will look at and see how and if it fits well into the game. Yeah, that's about the closest I could get to it at the moment with what exists, but we're always going to be reading and checking out your feedback. I mean, it's the game at the end of the day is made for the consumer, and we want to work with you, so keep giving us that type of feedback.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A side question here. You mentioned that high-level items will drop for crafting off high-level mobs. So does that really mean that crafters are meaningful? Because just like that gentleman was asking, a lot of us people who like crafting go, okay, I'm doing this because I like crafting, but there's no point to it.
Crafting is absolutely relevant through every stage of the game. You could level and use nothing but quest rewards and world drops, but if you'll take the time and invest it into your crafting at that stage, you'll
Wow.
be at an advantage.
Okay, that's another really good reason to join a guild.
Well, and I mean, another example is your equipment and your armor has stuff like sockets where you put in stones that add additional powers. Those stones, again, they can drop from the open world, but you as a crafter can make those stones.
Okay,
Yeah, definitely.
next question.
Hey, so going back to PvP, you mentioned that there is Avalon, so there's 3 factions you join and you kind of fight. It sounds like you do PvE content for your faction. Is there like PvP where there's actual objectives for you to fight the other players? Like,
Yes, killing the other factions and getting certain kill counts, that's also part of the objectives.
okay, cool.
And outside of Avalon itself, the game also has 2 different types of arenas. You have a standard PvP arena to where it can be 1v1 or 4v4, and that's, you know, you drop into the arena and red is dead. And then outside of that, the game also has what I call it a PvE arena, and you could think of it more like horde mode, to where you come in yourself or you come in with your group, and in the center there's a large glowing crystal, and for 10 or 15 minutes you have to defend that from wave of monster. So, I mean, there's
Oh, I love
actually
that.
quite a few options and scenes for being a competitive player, whether it's head-to-head against other players or just against the system itself. So, definitely.
This is great, by the way. I'm learning even more about the game.
My name's AJ, and I work in server infrastructure. So I want to take a step back from the gameplay question and ask how you're handling scalability for current players and things like on launch, the starting zones get too busy.
Well, there's a few different ways to handle it, and on the bright side, the KR branch is already launched, so we can learn from the difficulties and hardships they hit there. Being able to scale up monsters for that initial rush is something that we're going to need to be able to do, and there's multiple ways to handle it. I've seen it to where it's been done server side to where for a while the creature spawns itself has been ramped up. And I mean, I've been on projects to where there's been GMs invisible standing there, spawning those monsters for you. It's definitely a reality that has to be faced, and we're completely aware of it, and we'll be dealing with that. And then, I mean, the game itself is a single server that supports multiple channels, and that, again, will be handled and addressed based off of the demands of the players. As the player base grows, then the number of channels will be adjusted to be able to support it. That way, we don't want you to have to stand in a line for 40 minutes waiting for your monster to spawn for you to kill it. That's not fun.
I want to talk about a little bit about the fact that you're going to learn from the Korean release experience. So are we to assume that content will go first to the Korean client and then it will go through localization for the North American client as well? And if so, do you have any idea of how much of a timeline lapse there is involved?
At launch, I'm I don't have a definitive number for this, but at launch, I would say that the gap would be no more than about 6 months, and that's something that we'll work diligently to bring it down. Korea will get content first. We have to have a delay because of localization, as Linda said, but also for westernization. As new mechanics and systems come in for the KR region, if they're not ideal for the western region, then that's something we need to take a look at and figure out how to adapt it for our model of the game.
Cool.
So,
Next up.
Hey, I'm Will, and I have a question that sort of ties into guilds, rating, and the community aspects that were mentioned a little bit.
Okay.
So I know a lot of big things for MMOs that got big, right? So like Wrath of the Lich King drops for all that, and WoW was the community aspect of LFG not really being a thing at the time. So you had to go and get a group of people together that you play with normally to run raids. And so raids sort of drove the need for everybody to be more of a community.
Okay.
And now that I've seen, like we talked, that raids are something that you would like to see but are not necessarily there, what's the main drive for people to come together as a community rather than a party of 4?
the main reason that you'd have a community at this stage, one, is to have access to the multiple branches of crafting so that you can work together and get those types of resources. And then Avalon itself, to be truly successful in Avalon, those that can group together and coordinate both as guilds and as the faction that they're belonging to for that session, those tie in hand to hand. Whenever you have that larger community, you'll want to bring that to Avalon so that your faction for that week has a high level of coordination so that you can execute and win those types of engagements.
All right, and then one more question tying to that is similar to how you compared it to Guild Wars 2 system. Is there going to be sort of like a general or a commander system for Avalon, similar to like if you're really experienced in Guild Wars 2, you'll be tagged with a general system for your faction. So you're like a general who can tell people, hey, this is sort of what we're supposed to be doing. Is there any sort of plan for a player like that?
I'm going to have to dodge that one because I'm actually not certain. I will need to check on it. I do know the system you're talking about. It put the mark
Yeah.
above the character's head and it gave them a different tag in chat.
Yeah.
And having something like that for coordination would definitely be a benefit. So I'll get back to you on that one.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm pretty short. Hi, my name is Christopher Guzman, aka Rican and Barbarian. How many questions can I ask? I have like 3.
Let's go with 3.
All right, sweet.
I'm so thrilled that you came with lots.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Other than that, though, I love the fact that you have the Holy Trinity back, so you have the tank, the healer, and the DPS. But I remember you were saying about in order to not pitch yourself into that class, you have Estelles. Now, Estelles are going to be the only reason that keeps you out of that class, or are you going to be able to, like for a fighter, use like a two-handed sword, an axe, or so on and so forth?
Whenever the game launches, it will be that if you're a warrior, you wield a sword and a shield. If you're a mage, you have a staff. Assassins have daggers. And that's pretty set in stone for the beginning stage of the game. But looking at a way for players to branch out and further specialize their class specifically is on our radar, and that's something that we want to work towards.
Okay. My second question, I was going to go back to like the PvP version. I know we kind of like hit it on a lot of times. As far as you have Avalon, you have the Realm v Realm, and you also said you have the arenas, which is 1v1 and 3v3. Is there going to be a rank format for that, or 4v4?
A ranking format?
Like, you know, plat, silver, so on and so forth.
Oh, at this stage, no. There isn't bracketing of that nature yet. At this stage, it's come in, matchmaking, and competitive. Having that broken up into different brackets is definitely something we can look at, but as you've seen in other games, you need to be really careful with that, because if one bracket gets too heavy and one gets too light, you end up getting mix matching, and it's something that'll really need to be evaluated, because if we implement that, it needs to be implemented right. You only get one shot to do that type of system.
Will you be able to tell where you rank in terms of PvP power? Like, do you have a leaderboard system?
I mean, we see it for dungeons as far as the S plus and everything.
Yeah.
With the dungeons, you see it with your ranking, and
I'm so thrilled we stumped him.
I know, right?
Got billions of questions.
I know that there is a capability, but I am drawing a blank exactly on how that one is implemented, so
Okay.
pass.
My last question, so I can just get out of your hair. I don't want to.
No worries.
Now you said there's stealths. You can go into an area where you just basically, you can just kind of log off or whatever, or keep yourself on like AFK, and your stealths do that. So how is the server going to react when 60% of the community is doing that?
If 60% of the players are doing that, or we see that it becomes a growing issue as the game itself supports multiple channels, and other channels would need to be spun up to support that concurrent player.
Okay. And so that's about, other than that though, like as far as scripting goes, like what's your defense against that as well? Because someone can just go and do that basically, and then just kind of like, let's say 20 people, 30 people, or a whole guild just goes AFK in one zone that's known for like farming, especially a particular mat, you know, what's going to stop that?
Yeah, unattended gaming can be very, yeah, bots, that sort of
Definitely.
thing.
Well, if they're going to do that in any meaningful way to where they're going to be gaining anything of value for the high-end in-game, they're going to be doing that in Avalon, and I have a feeling that every one of you in the audience is going to help fix that problem.
All right, thank you for your time.
Yeah, no
I have a
problem.
new goal.
Hi. First question is, so I imagine all the classes have, you know, or each class has basically a set, you know, number of skills, types of skills. Does it ultimately break down into just following a sort of rotation, you know, damage dealers do a rotation to get their max damage out, things like that? Like, are there ways to customize your skills or your play style?
Okay, so that's actually an incredibly good question, and I have a few different lines that are going to go with this. So on the most basic level, you have your skill book, as you're talking about, and those static skills you have. But each skill, based off of what it does, has different attributes to it, whether it applies a dot and the duration of the dot, or the actual speed at which the skill is executed, or the damage that it does. As you level up, you're going to get ranks, and you can invest points into the aspects of your skills to customize them more to your type. So if you wanted to hit faster or hit harder, you're going to be able to do that. Then second to that, your Estelles themselves, depending on the class you play, will have special skills that combo off of your skills. So you have almost a dynamic tag team, plus the skills that are set the way that you customize them. And then third, your action bar itself isn't just your standard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each actual skill slot can be expanded, and you can socket multiple skills into like your number 1 button and use that to build your own combos. So if you want to have a pull, a stun, and then a knockdown, you'll be able to do that by building it yourself and then setting it up in such a way that that type of playstyle is 100% your own.
Wow.
Okay, thanks. The second question was, so you said you could have like between 1 and 3 Estelles out per person. Is there something like, you know, as you get stronger Estelles, you just basically get upgraded versions, or is it like your strongest one, you can only have 1, your weaker ones, you can have 3?
Your Estelles are divided into 3 different categories. Minions are the smallest in size and capability, and you're able to keep multiple of those summoned at a concurrent time. Then in between that, you have your Guardian Estelles. They're more powerful, they have more capability, but they're also more costly to keep summoned, and you would not want to have 2 of them summoned as you'd run out of your Estelle points and they'd eventually be banished. And then after your Guardians, you have a handful of what are called the Savior Estelles, and they are remarkably powerful. In the video that you saw previously, that Grim Reaper with the scythe, his name is Eligos. And whenever you summon him, he comes to the battlefield, and he has an amazing lightning-type AoE that deals very, very considerable damage, but he can only be maintained for about 30 seconds, so you need to use him strategically. And it's by weaving those different Estelles together and how you set them on your action bar will have a very heavy impact on how you play.
And last question is, I know a lot of MMOs basically foster larger communities that stick around for a while, even after the greater community dies out, typically with like role play and things like that.
Yep.
Do you have any plans to accommodate those types of players?
So as far as accommodating as the role players and the more close-knit groups, absolutely. I mean, the types of content that are available already cater to that. I mean, between the various forms of arenas, the costume systems themselves, adding in emotes and things of that nature, we want to generate content that appeals to the players that actually come to Astellia. So yes, we will have systems that help support the little guy.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no.
Oh, hey. So, you've got the Grim Reaper guy. I was gonna ask, the Estelles, what form do they take? Like, what do the minions look like?
Oh,
Are
that's...
they like kittens?
So
You know,
the the first Estelle that you're ever going to be introduced to, her name is Rhoda. And at first glance, she's going to look like a small a child in almost a Little Bo Peep costume. But as you get more into the storyline, you're going to find out that she's a doll. You can see she has articulated fingers, wooden knee joints, and as it turns out, she was the first Estelle. She was handcrafted, and she
Wow.
is of incredible importance to the overall storyline. And I mean, you have everything from her to the Grim Reaper. Vanessa is the Valkyrie. You have Ignigon that looks like a humanoid dragon, or Braga is a massive lion that he's another savior type Estelle, and he's more of a tank. He'll come in and he will pull everything off of you and keep you
cool.
alive in that clutch moment.
I can hardly wait to. So, and all of these Estelles have a backstory.
Yes, you meet them. You go through the game. Some Astellians will force Estelles to work for them. Throughout the storyline, many of the Estelles, you establish a relationship with them, and based off of the interactions throughout the storyline, they come to work with you of their own volition. And it's actually an integral part of the storyline that you'll discover as you play.
And sorry, I'm abusing my power of sitting right next to Wes to stick in more questions. Your turn.
Yeah, sorry, my second question. But, so say you get like a low minion level Astellia. Can you rank it up to make it eventually a savior, or is it always going to be a minion level?
Okay, so the Estelles have two branches of progression, and the first is just the actual level, as in the same way that you get experience. A minion will always be a minion, a servant will always be a servant, a guardian will always be a guardian, and a savior will always be a savior. That's part of their mechanics and their cost. But outside of just leveling up your Estelle, there's a star system where you can actually, let's call it like a prestige rank for your Estelle, and they can grow in power in that way. So where even if you use nothing but the smaller Estelles, if you invest the time and effort needed to rank them up through that system, they become very, very powerful, and you will not miss out on it.
Okay. Second question. So how do Estelle points work? So is it like just based off level, or certain classes get more because they might need, say like a healer might need more Estelles to keep monsters off them, versus a tank which might need like less to just deal damage for them?
No, the Estelle points are uniform across the board, and each class has different needs. As you're right, the healer should and will more than likely walk and carry the tank type Estelles and the damage dealing Estelles. But the tank itself, he needs something that can help counter ranged, and having a healer to support him. So each class has different Estelles that are part of a meta gameplay that are complementary and supplementary to the strengths and weaknesses of each class.
All right, last question.
Okay.
Will you be able to bring Estelles into PvP combat? Because
Absolutely.
Okay.
Great
Because it wouldn't be
question.
like extremely balanced maybe for a tank to be fighting a healer if the healer didn't have an Estelle to maybe deal some damage to the tank.
Nope, they are absolutely, they are an inherent part of the game that are used throughout all of the content.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi there. I
Hi.
was wondering if you guys have plans yet to implement a day one digital or physical edition of the game.
I don't think I follow.
So like a day one edition, or like a collector's edition, I guess.
Gotcha.
I understand. The actual sales packages themselves are still in work. We will focus on that more whenever we have a concrete method for adapting to the play to win concept. Once that is set in stone, we'll be able to hammer out the packages themselves and know what we can offer in them that works best for the market.
Awesome. Thank you.
Coming in 2019.
All right, as someone that plays Final Fantasy, I know the real end game is fashion. So is there like a
So
glamour
true.
and dye
So
system?
true.
Good question. So at this stage, the game does have a costume system, but it does not have a glamour or a dye system. That is definitely a piece of content that is incredibly, you are not wrong, incredibly well received in the Western market, and it's something that we should definitely look at, but I do not have a roadmap for that at this time.
All right, and then another question. Will there be any like player housing sort of thing?
At this stage, there is no player housing.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, fashion is one of those things that it means a lot to us personally, but it's super, super optional. So it's typically one of the most accepted forms of microtransaction
Absolutely.
in games. So, yeah.
Everything from new costumes to impressive mounts. Every game around Halloween, I buy the Nightmare mount. I completely understand.
Hello, my name is Pendragon. Also, my name is Rob. I'm a streamer for Nerd House Gaming. We've been streaming the Astellia Korean version for about the last month.
Oh, cool.
You've actually answered a lot of the questions that I already had, so I only have two more questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
The first question that I have is, are you able to give some examples of what's going to be in the cash shop? In the Korean version, there's a lot of stuff, as you mentioned, that are extremely pay to win. Have you given any thought in what's going to be in the Western cash shop?
The default answer for this would obviously be cosmetic items, but then there is something to take in consideration as far as convenience goes, such as whenever you're going through the leveling experience, being able to resurrect easily whenever you've died an accidental or an incidental death doing questing. And things like that are definitely on the table, but they need to be done in such a way that you can't use it to cheese and get a higher rank in a dungeon or to zombie run and kill everybody in Avalon. And that's part of the balancing process that we're going through right now.
Thank you. And then the second question that I have is, as somebody who's been playing the game for a little while, I have a ton of feedback. So do you guys have a system where I can submit that feedback, and what will be done with that feedback if and when it is submitted?
At this stage, we're paying close attention to the Reddit and the community Discord that have been set up by the community itself. And the teaser website is live. In the very visible future, not too far from now, we will be opening up the official website itself, and we will be collecting feedback from day one on the forums. Our CM is already working on this process, and we'll have a detailed, fleshed out system how you can give us your feedback. And through that process, it'll be taken internally, reviewed, prepared, and then shared with the dev team.
Nice.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate you getting to come to the panel. Just two questions myself. First, with the ever-evolving and changing audience of streaming, is there anything that you guys bring to the table as an MMO that's going to be new for the streaming community or audience of streamers? I'm not personally one. I've got too much of a job commitment and want to play games, but I love being a part of that community, and I find it very difficult in MMOs both engaging in a personal community as well as the streamer community, or having the streamer be online and not be a massive disaster. So I didn't know if you guys were doing anything different.
So as far as in the in-game mechanics, streaming, it will not be a problem. The only time that you would be concerned about sensitive information is Avalon, and there are options that we're considering of how to make that more streamer friendly. I don't have a definitive answer on that side. And then outside of the game itself, we are working on developing, and we want to have a streamer program itself to where we can work with streamers large and small, help them provide content, and work with them to spread the word of Astellia. We believe more in working directly with influencers and gamers themselves than relying on the more old-fashioned adverts and advertisements that you see either through commercials or banners and things of that nature. The human aspect goes further, and it means more, and it gives us more feedback.
It's always more genuine when a streamer is commenting on actual gameplay as they're going through it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's good to hear. As an avid person of way too many corpse runs and the plane of fear, as that reference was earlier, I know that the biggest challenge for me, both as a young MMO player and an older MMO player, was the old grind or spend 60 hours for a small win, and now they spend 10 minutes and get 6 wins. What do you guys see as the future of MMO balancing with that in terms of the carrot and stick? And if you guys have any strategies around that from a developer standpoint?
Are you asking for the industry in general or for Astellia?
Oh, for you, yeah, Astellia in the industry.
For Astellia specifically, it's a matter of understanding the audience that you're targeting and trying to figure out what their actual median gameplay time is. Whenever you're talking about the older games like EQ and doing the Shadow Plane, or even all the way up to like Final Fantasy XI and killing Ginbu, those types of content, they were planned and based on around a time whenever 40-man raids were a thing, and doing a 20-hour play session wasn't unheard of. And now we're more at an age in a portion of the industry where instant gratification carries a lot of weight. So with that in mind, you need to find a balance between the two to where whenever people only have a little bit of time to play, they don't feel like they just logged in and stood around, but you also don't want to set a bar so high that they need to play for 8 consecutive hours. And with that in mind, looking at the dungeons in their current form, a full dungeon session doesn't currently exceed, or it sits right around the area of about an hour clear time. Each of them actually have a timer, and whenever you first run into that dungeon, you'll see that counting down, and the faster you clear it, the better score that you're going to get. And worst case scenario, you're going to outrun the timer and you'll get a very low rank, but it will work for you in that manner. So, and we will continue to review and polish that system.
Thank you.
Yeah.
An hour for a dungeon run sounds just perfect to me. Like, seriously, I can do that right before supper.
Order a pizza on your lunch break.
Yes.
The only question I have is, for PvP, are items gonna matter, or is everything gonna be scaled?
Items will matter, especially in the Avalon. Your progression is a heavy piece of weight for that. You're talking about equalized PvP. That is something that will belong more heavily, I believe, in the arena scene. And at the moment, it is based off of your own personal progression. But I can definitely see where you're coming from with that. And I think that that has a place in the industry and is something that needs to be considered.
Yeah, because sometimes in like arenas before, for example, in WoW, your items that you get from PvP sets would matter, and now everything has a certain eye level, or you get this many stats for having this eye level.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got exactly 5 minutes left, and it looks like we have the right number of people to ask questions during that period.
I had two quick questions. First being, what's the support for alt characters? Because I know there are games like Guild Wars 2 where it's just account-wide, but there are also games like Final Fantasy where each character is an individual thing and you have to redo a lot of content.
Right. As an altaholic, I need to know the answer to this too.
The game absolutely supports alt-type gameplay. You could easily make a character of each class, play them through, and that's not a problem at all. It isn't one size fits all. It's if you have a warrior and then you start with your mage is starting fresh.
And the second quick question was, due to the extensiveness of the solo play, particularly with dungeons, what encourages players to enter into a dungeon environment with a party?
The party will have an increased difficulty, can offer increased mechanics itself, adding to the complexity of the dungeon, and the rewards are scaled better for a 4-player group.
Plus, of course, the fact that an AI support player is never going to be as smart as your own spouse, the ranger, once you res them once or twice.
Exactly.
Does the scholar get a res? Please tell me the scholar gets a res.
Of course.
Okay, good.
I just have one question this time. So there's been a lot of talk about this Holy Trinity aspect, and some people have sort of asked about blending them, right? Where if your healer attacks a tank, does he have methods to deal with that? My inverse question is, if we're going back to the Holy Trinity, is it more your healer shouldn't be attacking the tank and they just lose because they're attacking the tank, which is more like geared towards that Holy Trinity, or how it initially was, where the healer didn't fight because they can't? Or is it more of a blended system where your healer is bad at dealing damage but not necessarily inept?
So we're talking specifically in the PvP scene, yes?
Yes.
Yes, so your scholar absolutely does have capability and the ability to defend itself in combat. It has either crowd control and minor damage type, so that at the very least you can try to outplay that tank, run them in circles and slowly whittle and burn them down.
I love
and then
that.
you supplement that by bringing out damage dealing Astells. One of the things I don't think I made clear is with the Astells that you have on your bar, you can move them on that F1 through F8. If you walk into the engagement and you have 3 tank Astells out for some reason and that's not going to support what you're about to do, you can cancel their summons mid-combat and bring out the other ones and adapt to that system, to the circumstance that you're on the fly.
Okay.
There is nothing worse than trying to kill a really good healer. It's going to take you like 4.5 hours.
Hi. I'm curious about crafting again. Rare materials you say drop from the dungeons. How rare is rare? Will I have to run a dungeon 100 times to get the item, or is there a token system?
There is not a token system, but based off of my own experience, I've leveled every class by hand legitimately to 50, at least once, if not several times.
Yeah, but you're insane. What about for normal people?
It's still not too bad at all.
Okay.
Throughout each of those gameplay sessions, I've never had any trouble getting those materials. If it does become a problem, we'll need to evaluate that and consider something like a token system or simply just adjusting the drop rate.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's time for us. Thank you so much for joining us. I have learned a tremendous amount about this game. Thank you to Wes Connor for bringing this up for us, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more on Astellia.
Excellent. I really do appreciate all of you coming tonight. Hope you all had a good time.